I think it's safe to say that Metroid is a pretty big deal to me. Metroid Prime was a huge part of my early tweens. The amazing visuals and intricate worlds with the beautiful music and gameplay wooed me, even though I got stuck in Phendrana Drifts and didn't beat it until much later in my life. I wasn't really into Metroid until Metroid Dread was revealed. I thought it was really neat, but after seeing Arlo's reaction, I knew I needed to try this series. So, I picked up Super Metroid, and it became one of my favorite games of all time. To this day, I have a staggering 50 hours, just from the amount of times I've 100%ed it. I also picked up Metroid Dread on release. It was the first game I ever bought on day one of its release. I proceeded to 100% that game, and while it didn't urge me to give it countless replays the same way Super did, I still thoroughly enjoyed my time with it and consider it a masterpiece. The most recent Metroid game I played was Metroid Fusion, which I consider to be a great game. Needless to say, I think this series rules. Recently, a server I'm in had an event where they were playing some games, and the game they were playing at the time was Metroid for the NES. This piqued my interest as a Metroid fan, and I decided to finally give the game a shot. I had played it before, but never got far due to a lack of interest. Now, I finally had a reason to try out the game that created one of my favorite series. I had heard some negative things about the game, but went in with an open mind, hoping that even if it didn't match the standards set by the other games from the series, it could at least be a good time. Before I continue, I want to make two things clear. For the rest of this video, I will not be bringing up the other Metroid games. This is going to be strictly looking at Metroid 1 without the context of the future games, mostly because I want to look at this game as its own thing. Second, I won't ever be saying what the devs should have done. What we have now is what the devs decided to make with their limited hardware and knowledge. I will be critiquing what the product is, but I don't personally believe that it should have been different. Now that that's all said, let's hop into my review of Metroid for the NES. Metroid's story is simple. We're told to defeat the Metroid on planet Zebeth and destroy Mother Brain. Simple enough. The planet we're actually on is called Zebes, and that's a mistranslation, which is a great sign of things to come. We're brought right in and are in a room filled with enemies in two paths, one to the right and one to the left. And I immediately want to praise something that this game does well, and that's introducing enemies. For example, the Zoomers. We're immediately shown their gimmick. They crawl on walls and they don't have any attacks, and they die in 2 hits. They're put in just a way that they can't hurt you, but you can observe them and see how they work. The wavers bump up of a wall the first time you see them. The screes hang on ceilings, indicating they might fly down. It's the same philosophy you see in 1-1 or many other Nintendo games. After grabbing the Morph Ball, you can go through the admittedly tough enemies. They deal lots of damage and can be hard to hit, especially with your short-range blaster. It's a bit unfun to fight enemies right now, but surely you'll find lots of upgrades that make combat more interesting. You continue forward into a room with crumbly-looking blocks. This is the first gate of many that we'll need to find a key to unlock. We continue onwards until we hit a wall with a 1-block gap beneath it. I will admit it's a bit of a trek to get back to the Morph Ball if you accidentally miss it, but it's not the worst. Once you go through, you're met with a larger vertical platforming section, or VPS for short. I'm gonna be honest, I really hate these. They're long, very uninteresting, and require you to go through them countless times. As you work your way up, you find a door. You go through it to end up in another long VPS. And this one leads up and down, meaning you'll have to check everywhere. Unfortunately, most rooms you'll find in the vertical sections either lead to red doors or dead ends that you might want to come back to with Morph Ball bombs. If you journey down to the bottom of the second VPS, you'll find a long cavern that leads you to missiles. One touch about missiles that I like is when you have them selected, missile doors light up, or at least the red ones do. Now all of those dead ends at the top of that first VPS can be unlocked. You also get to have a sneak peek at Norfair, though I didn't stick around much there. After you go back and explore the 2 previously inaccessible areas, you find a room with 2 statues of weird creatures and an upgrade for your gun, the long beam. Now combat is a lot easier and the extra reach feels really nice. There is one problem, however. There's a pretty big hallway gauntlet that leads directly to the red door. And when I say big, I mean big. It's filled with tough enemies and platforming. Going through all that, especially without the long beam, only to find out it leads to something you'll need to come back to later is kinda shit. It would have been a non-issue if they made an earlier door red so the player doesn't waste their time. It also doesn't help that enemies are tough, fast, and plentiful. They can deal large amounts of damage, and because health drops are random and don't heal much, they deal far more damage than you deal to them. There are also multiple segments where enemies will flood the screen, infinitely respawning, while you're either in a tight corridor or in a tough platforming section. My question is what I'm supposed to be doing. Am I supposed to be focusing on killing off infinitely respawning enemies that are hard to kill and rarely drop resources, or am I supposed to be focused on the precise platforming? It's a bit much to do both at once. And since you only respawn with 30 health and way back at the beginning of an area, every death stings. You not only have to grind back for health, but you also have to go all the way back to where you were, going through the awful BPSs, corridors flooded with enemies, and constant dead ends you're sure to hit without a map on hand. But anyways, you go through and finally get bombs, which opens up a few new areas to explore. The first area this opens up is a place at the beginning of the game with the crumbly blocks, along with areas at the top of the first orange VPS. At this point, you have access to a lot of areas. I thought since Norfair is traditionally inaccessible without the Varia suit, it was time to go back to the beginning and infiltrate Kraid's lair. I mean, we just got an item that lets us get in there, and it's so distinct that it feels like the game's guiding us there. Plus, normally we'd need Varia suit for Norfair anyways. That's what I thought at least. I spent over an hour banging my head against the wall that was Kraid's lair. The enemies deal 15 to 20 damage for every hit. When you die, you respawn with 30 health. That meant for each attempt at what I thought was the next area, I had to grind for health, only to be killed over and over again. The enemies filled the screen, were overwhelmingly quick, and killed you in just a single hit. They even hit you through screen transitions when you were going through doors. I just wanted to explore and collect upgrades. The game wanted me to grind. So I continued grinding for health, going in attempt after attempt. I resorted to using save states, and then the rewind. I even took a detour to find Ice Beam, more on that later. But nothing worked. I kept getting killed again and again, slowly starting to despise this game. I eventually reached a breaking point from the stress and tedium bubbling up inside of me and had to put the game down. A few hours went by as I was contemplating my choice to play this game. I really wanted to like it, but it just kept kicking me while I was down. But then, as I was looking at this game's map out of desperation, it struck me. I was possibly not even supposed to be there yet, so I left that area and went all the way back to Norfair. And you know what? I was right! The game tricked me into thinking I was in the right area. I cannot express enough how soul-crushing this is. What type of sick game has areas you can easily access that you're not supposed to be in? What is this, Hollow Knight? I genuinely went through so much stress and anger and boredom grinding for Kraid's goddamn lair only for it all to be meaningless. I guess this could be spun around to be my fault for not reading the game's mind, but I say directing me to an area I'm not supposed to be in and not telling me I'm in the wrong area is bad game design. Going through Norfair gets you both the high jump boots and the screw attack, so why not put the entrance on a ledge I can't reach, or add blocks that can only be destroyed with the screw attack? Why have this nearly impossible area to traverse open this early and not offer proper guidance to get back on track? Keep in mind, traversal sucks in this game, so it's not like you're ever going to want to experiment with going to different areas. It's bad design. I'd also say hiding mandatory collectibles under a fake lava pit is bad game design, especially when one of the pits is just wrong. And the only way to get out is either to do an awful, annoying platforming segment with these glitchy breakaway blocks that can still get you killed because of the enemies, or to just bite the bullet and die. I want to be clear that I started using a map and used save states and rewind whenever I was frustrated for the rest of the game. If that doesn't make the experience pure and makes my review false, then I'd fully recommend playing this game without any outside help and seeing how much fun you have. So we trek all the way back to Norfair, dying a few times because I'm sick of the backtracking and just want to get on with it already. I eventually reached Norfair, and what do you know? You don't need the Varia suit. How fun! I understand this isn't technically the game's fault, but in literally every other Metroid game, this is an area you can't access without the Varia suit. And maybe putting some memorable room with breakaway blocks could have helped guide the player better. I don't know. The enemies here are much more bearable, but still dish out more damage than you can get back. Luckily, there's tons of missile expansions, which does kind of feel strange to just get like a ton in a row, but I'll take it. My dopamine is really low. I guess while I run through Norfair having the time of my life, I should talk about some miscellaneous stuff. The controls are actually pretty solid. It was rare that they messed me up. I will say Samus does go pretty slow, but it works for the more precise platforming. Her movement, on the other hand, is very basic. You don't have a crouch, so you can't hit short enemies on the ground, you can't aim diagonally, and there's zero flashiness or growth in the movement, with the acceptance of the space jump to jump higher and the screw attack to help make combat a little more interesting, as well as making getting through cramped rooms full of enemies a little more painless. You can't wall jump, you can't parry enemies, you can't slide, you can't dash, you just kinda goofily speed walk everywhere. I understand that technical limitations make adding those types of movement options hard, but I feel like adding a run at least would make things a lot more bearable, though I'm not sure how they do it with the limited buttons on the NES controller. A little bit of unintentional movement are the bomb jumps. Playing bombs on the ground feels weird and clunky for whatever reason, but it does help spice up ball movement a little bit. The performance is less than stellar. Massive frame drops are common and they can lead to inputs being eaten, sometimes causing unfair deaths. I understand it's a pretty big game for NES standards and it is old, so I'll let this slide, but it is a problem, especially in rooms full of lava pits and enemies. The visuals are pretty nice. Samus is a bit cartoonish, but the game does an okay job of making rooms distinct for the most part. There are lots of areas that do look very similar, however, and tons of copy and pasted rooms, so it's easy to get lost and hit dead ends. Keep in mind, dying makes you backtrack through these rooms. The environments look really good, they're fairly memorable. My favorite thing about this entire game, however, is the music. My god, it is so good. The haunting yet heroic title screen, the confident Brinstar, and my favorite track in the game, Kraid's Lair. For how much it sucked earlier to go there, the music is god tier. Easily one of my favorites, up there with Magmoor Caverns and Phendrana Drifts. I should also bring up the Famicom version of the OST, which is an improvement on the US version. The backing instruments are a lot more prominent and sound great, and I'd overall recommend it above the US version. Anyways, Norfair is weird. This place is loaded with collectibles, mostly bunched right next to each other. It feels so strange that most of the game missiles are tough to find, but now they're just thrown together in clumps of 2 or 3. They're still annoying to get to, but at least now you never have to worry about running out of them. There's also a notable room with an additional ice beam in it. You have to go to the room from the back to get it, which is pretty interesting and creative. The additional ice beam doesn't make your attack stronger if you found the other ice beam upgrade, but adds a little variety in pathing, which might be nice for replays. After exploring through the depths of Norfair, you finally find the space jump and screw attack. The space jump makes platforming a lot more bearable and helps you get the Varia suit, which increases defense in this game. It's probably the most invaluable item in the entire game. You also find the wave beam, which shreds through enemies. Going from the depths of Norfair, which has ambient music and tough enemies, back to Brinstar, which has triumphant music and weak enemies, feels very nice. You can shred through them with the wave beam and soar through them with the screw attack, even if it's a little janky. The wave beam can hit enemies on the floor and the ceiling, and deals a good amount of damage. Dare I say, it's a great feeling. It's for sure a power rush, and now we're finally ready to go fight Kraid. If memory serves, there should be a... Ah, there! I don't know how I'd ever find that on my own, but thank you, Super Metroid, for guiding me. Now, just to get it... It's a bit too high to jump to. Wait a second, there was an enemy here. Do I have to freeze him? Okay, well, I've gotten both the ice beams. How do I swap between them? You can't. You can't swap between your beams. Once you pick up Wave Beam, it replaces Ice Beam, and vice versa. If you want to go for 100%, you are required to have Ice Beam. So what now? Am I stuck? Fear not! You can get your Ice Beam back and go collect those missing collectibles! Oh, cool, that's a relief. How do I get it back? By backtracking all the way back to where the Ice Beams were originally found. I officially hate this game. But luckily we can pick those up later. Right now we can storm Kraid's Lair. Since we have all our new upgrades, Kraid's Lair isn't too bad. There's a lot of dead ends and gaps you can only traverse with the Ice Beam, but other than the typical annoying game design, it's not too bad. There are a few especially sucky ones though, like this one room we have to fall through fake acid to get a collectible, or this other room with easily the worst jump in the game. If you fail it, you have to go through multiple hallways again just to retry. On the bright side, the music is so goddamn good. Eventually you reach Kraid, and his fight sucks. Metroid 1's idea of a challenging fight is to spam the screen with projectiles and have Kraid put up a shield so he's almost impossible to hit, wasting your precious missiles. This fight sucks balls, and remember, if you lose, you have to grind back your health and missiles and go through this whole fucking layer again. Eventually you do kill him, earning 75 missiles, which I gotta say, the missile economy is so screwed. I don't know why I would have gone for most of the missiles in this game since Norfair dumps tons on you and both bosses give you 75 each. After getting the most annoying E-tank in the game, we traverse back through the mess that is Kraid's Lair and work our way back to fight Ridley. Once we arrive, we go through his somehow even more annoying lair and go fight him. Ridley's fight is also complete ass, but for the opposite reason to Kraid. Ridley dies in like 10 seconds and barely puts up a fight. He doesn't even move. This has led one of my friends to theorize that the game was fairly untested, and I think that's the understatement of the year. I will say I hate Kraid's fight way more for being annoying and bullshit, but this fight was pitiful. Disrespectful to Ridley, honestly. Now, we're near the end game. I made sure to run through, re-grab Ice Beam, and collect everything I missed until I had 100% of the items. That's right, I did everything, and I recommend you do as well if you're ever going to try this game. There's definitely satisfaction in getting everything. It'll be a surprise tool that'll help us later. Now, we're on to Storm Torian. Go fight Mother Brain. Before we we even get there, I have an issue. These statues you have to hit flash, but there's no indication hitting them does anything, which is just another bad game design decision this game has. There is no excuse. Once you hit both, a bridge pops up, and we can now go into the final gauntlet. Before I went through this section, I was considering giving Metroid a 3 out of 10. It's aged terribly, is littered with bad game design and terrible gameplay, but had a few moments of brilliance that brought it up from being terrible. After experiencing Torian and all of the horrors it holds, I would say this game is lucky to get a 2 out of 10 from me, and that's with save states, rewind, and a map. I genuinely think that if I didn't respect this game's efforts to be groundbreaking and try to overachieve, I would have given this game a 1 out of 10. I'm not kidding when I say this is so far the worst end section of a game I have ever played. As soon as we get in, we're hit with a fairly mid song and some pretty bland visuals. We go down a little before, uh-oh, a Metroid. Hope you have Ice Beam because you can't damage them unless they're frozen. This is easily the worst enemy in the entire game. It's far too fast and unpredictable for how terrible the aiming is, and they love to shove 2 of them on screen during platforming sequences. If one latches onto you, you have to awkwardly use bombs to try to detach it, but for whatever reason, the bombs become so finicky and they don't work properly. Sometimes Samus won't lay them midair, which you need to do to knock the Metroids off. Sometimes they will go off midair, but the Metroid won't care and will stay latched. Sometimes you'll hit the Metroid off, only for it to immediately fly back onto you and continue dealing massive damage. What's worse is you can't fire missiles to escape rooms or fight off other Metroids while they're on you, and more than 5 Metroids can latch onto you at once. The bombs only deter 1 at a time, so if more than 1 latches onto you, you're basically dead. And at this point in the game, you have to grind so much to get back to full health and missiles that you could spend hours grinding for just 1 attempt. What doesn't help is that this final area has the second worst enemy in the game as well, these donut things. They deal 15 damage, spawn in multiple groups, and fly at the player at weird angles and can hit you multiple times. They also just appear out of thin air right on top of you, which is just so cool. They can knock you into Metroids, off of platforms, or into pits you can't escape from. I hate these things. As we trek through this hellscape, we eventually get to Mother Brain's room. I have fought many terrible bosses in my lifetime, but none even compare to this fight. You start in this room flooded with projectiles, and oh my god, the lag is abysmal. Inputs are consistently eaten, and it makes the tight platforming a struggle. The gimmick is you have to destroy these barrier things, or the Zebetites, with your missiles while bullets fire at you randomly, and these goddamn donuts spawn. These segments progressively get harder, adding a lava pit and at the end a regenerating barrier. This barrier especially sucks to destroy because the donuts pull a Mr. President get down and block your missiles. Plus it's easy to get knocked around into more bullets or even into lava. You eventually bring down the barrier and get to fight Mother Brain, and this is where the true suffering begins. Mother Brain's hitbox is extremely precise, and you can only damage her while standing on these platforms or from a really well done mid-air shot. You have such little room to move from the small platform and the amount of bullets on screen. Plus you can't be too far back on the platform or else your missiles will despawn. Holy hell, this game sucks. Mother Brain also has a lot of health, meaning this is a long ass fight. The cherry on top is if you get past the area where the final barrier was, you're stuck in this lava pit. It becomes nearly impossible to damage Mother Brain, and the amount of projectiles being spammed at you makes getting out impossible. For whatever fucking reason, the donuts have a push box and deal knockback, so it's really easy to get pushed into this kill pit. I seriously hate this. And just remember how punishing dying is, especially when you have to grind back all of those missiles and all of your E-tanks, because you'll need all of them for this fight. I'm not ashamed to admit I used rewind, because quite frankly, I don't think I could have beat it without rewind. It's a terrible fight, and this game doesn't deserve my patience. One strategy I've heard works is to freeze the donuts so they spawn this, but I forgot to do that. Oops. After finally killing this bitch, you have to do an escape sequence. The sequence itself is pretty forgettable, and has you do one last VPS. Oh boy! Once you escape, text flashes on screen as Samus strips. Then roll credits. I don't think it is at all fair to say this game aged poorly because this type of design was never good. Tell me a time when having breakaway floors with no indication, fake lava pits, and horrible platforming segments that at best drag and are at worst are terrible with the enemy spam was good design. If I was a kid back in 1986 playing this, I don't think I would have enjoyed it. There were a few moments of the game that were okay, and even a few moments of brilliant design, but those don't make up for the general bad time this game is. I'm giving Metroid 1 a 2 out of 10, please use a map and all of the features NES Online offers. The reason I can't bring myself to give this game a 1 out of 10 is because even though I didn't like it, this game was very ahead of its time. It was giant and tried things no other game had before, and I kinda respect it for that. I'd rather a game try to innovate and be unique than a game that just stick to what's safe and try nothing new. And I want to be clear that if you like this game, I'm happy you got a good experience out of it. Your opinions are completely valid. Just because I was frustrated, it doesn't mean others won't like it, and maybe if you go in with all this knowledge that I've presented you, you'll have a good time. There's definitely replay value. I personally cannot enjoy this game, but I think it's worth existing if it could create one of my favorite series. I recommend playing the remake over this game if you want to see the origin of Metroid's story, and who knows, I might review that soon. But despite my struggles, Metroid 1 is the game it is. It's buggy, laggy, terribly designed, and is generally bad time. But it's also unique, innovative, charming, melodious, and worth checking out maybe once for like 30 minutes. Actually, I have a friend who enjoyed this game, and I'd like to give them the spotlight so they can share a different perspective on this game.
Hey guys, Luxqaers here. I will be quite honest, I respectfully disagree with a lot of Skull Kid's points. I get that there are a lot of flaws with this game, but Metroid 1 always gave me feelings of loneliness and dread while going through it, while also being a smartly designed game at the end of it all. I remember my first time playing Metroid 1. I knew from memory where a lot of things were from various playthroughs. They helped me get started, and I enjoyed playing Metroid 1 for that reason. Like Skull Kid said earlier, I think it would be a great idea to just use a map or a guide to play this game. And I mean it when I say it. I genuinely feel like you will have a much more solid experience knowing the layout of the area from various YouTube playthroughs before playing the game. Now, I know some of you may say, well, this is bad game design if you're looking at a map online. Why are you even playing it like this? Here's my personal interpretation. We live in an age where the internet can just be easily accessed with your fingertips. If you want to figure out how to exactly reach Kraid in his hideout, or know where the screw attack is, no one is going to pick up an issue of Nintendo Power, call a hotline, or talk to a friend. No, you have to look at a map online and see what you need to do on your own. I find an accessible way to play games like these, and just plainly have fun with it. Like my last playthrough of Metroid 1, I used the map to see the best route on where things are. And when you get all of those missiles, the power-up wave beam, the screw attack, and all your energy tanks, it just makes you feel unstoppable. Like dopamine coming to rush into your brain. The game itself rewards you for getting all the collectibles, as it makes the final battle in Torian feel so worth it, coupled with the amazing Brinstar theme, which is one of my favorite things on the NES, and just the sense of dread you get when you realize you are low on health and need to find a grinding spot to get your health back. Man, what a game Metroid 1 is. Anyways, I wanted to thank you all for watching this, and Skull Kid Kazooie's review. Make sure you hit her like button and subscribe if you want to see more of her content. Make sure to leave a comment on this video as well, and share it around. Anyways, until next time, see you on the other side!